Eastern Europe's experience during World War II was marked not only by the immediate horrors of combat, but also by a profound collapse of social order that left civilians exposed to unprecedented levels of violence, deprivation, and fear. In the early years of the war, when German forces advanced into Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, and the Baltic states, entire communities found themselves suddenly under occupation, forced to comply with the oppressive policies of the Nazi regime. The administrative machinery implemented by the occupiers was designed not only to control, but also to systematically exploit the population. Citizens were subjected to forced labor, their homes and properties were confiscated, and they were often deported to labor or concentration camps far from their homes. The psychological impact of this displacement was immense, as families were torn apart, children were separated from their parents, and the elderly were left to fend for themselves in a hostile environment. While the Nazis implemented these brutal policies, the local populations often struggled to survive, resorting to clandestine methods of procuring food, shelter, and medical care. Black markets emerged despite the constant threat of punishment, and neighbors relied on secret networks to hide and support those targeted by the authorities. In the small towns and villages, entire ways of life were disrupted, with traditional social structures replaced by fear and survival-driven hierarchies. As the war progressed, the scale of atrocities expanded. The implementation of the final solution in Eastern Europe brought systematic extermination to the forefront of Nazi policies. In cities such as Lviv, Minsk, Vilnius, and smaller towns across the region, Jews, Romani people, political dissidents, and others deemed undesirable were rounded up, confined in ghettos, and eventually sent to concentration or extermination camps. These ghettos were overcrowded, unsanitary, and lacked sufficient food, resulting in rampant disease and starvation. Despite these dire circumstances, acts of courage and resistance persisted. Citizens engaged in secret education for children. Underground presses circulated forbidden information, and partisan units conducted sabotage and intelligence operations against occupying forces. The forests of Belarus, Ukraine, and Lithuania became the hidden battlegrounds for partisan fighters who risked everything to defend their communities. Yet these acts of defiance came at an extraordinary cost. German reprisals for partisan activities were swift and brutal. Entire villages were often razed, and civilians were executed in retaliation for attacks on occupying forces. These retaliations created a climate of terror, where even minor acts of defiance could result in mass death. Beyond the immediate violence, Eastern Europe faced devastating famine as agricultural production collapsed under the strain of occupation, military requisition, and the destruction of farmland. Civilians struggled to find food, often resorting to eating roots, tree bark, or scavenging in the forests to survive. Malnutrition weakened communities, and outbreaks of disease, including typhus, dysentery, and influenza, swept through populations already weakened by starvation. Medical care was virtually non-existent, with hospitals destroyed or commandeered by occupying forces, leaving the sick and injured to rely on rudimentary and unsafe treatment methods. Children, particularly vulnerable during this period, suffered immensely. Thousands were orphaned or separated from their families, many forced into labor or conscripted into military or paramilitary units. Education was disrupted, and entire generations faced trauma that would influence their psychological development for decades. Adolescents often took on responsibilities far beyond their age, acting as couriers for resistance movements, or helping to secure food and shelter for their families. The experience of women during this period was also particularly harrowing. Many were forced into labor, exploited by occupying forces, or subjected to sexual violence. Women often became the primary caregivers for children and elderly relatives while also navigating the dangers of occupied territories. Their resilience, however, played a critical role in preserving families and communities amid chaos. The Eastern European underground movements, including the Polish Home Army, Ukrainian Insurgent Army, and Belarusian partisan units, carried out daring missions against German supply lines, communication networks, and local administrative centers. These operations required immense courage and ingenuity, often relying on civilians for intelligence, shelter, and logistical support. The success of these missions was frequently measured in the lives saved, disrupted operations, or temporary liberation of towns, but the consequences of failure were severe, resulting in massacres or deportations of civilians. Psychological trauma was widespread, not only among those directly affected by violence, but also among communities that witnessed the horrors from a distance. The constant fear, loss, and deprivation created mental scars that endured long after the end of hostilities. Post-war studies have revealed high rates of depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress among survivors, illustrating the profound and long-lasting impact of war on civilian populations. The dual occupations of Eastern Europe by Nazi Germany and later the Soviet Union added layers of complexity to the civilian experience. While the defeat of the Nazis brought liberation in one sense, the advance of the Soviet army introduced new forms of political control, deportation, and repression. Civilians who had survived years of Nazi brutality were often skeptical of Soviet intentions, and some faced forced relocation to Siberia or other remote regions as part of post-war population transfers. Economic devastation further compounded these challenges. Cities lay in ruins, industries were destroyed, and transportation networks were disrupted. The rebuilding process was slow, hindered by political instability, lack of resources, and the psychological impact of years of sustained conflict. Survivors often faced the dual burden of physical reconstruction and the need to reconcile the trauma of war with the demands of daily life. Historical records, survivor testimonies, and archival research have gradually shed light on these hidden aspects of the war. In many instances, the stories of entire communities were almost erased, leaving only fragments of evidence behind. Researchers and historians continue to uncover new details, piecing together narratives of courage, suffering, and resilience that help us understand the human dimension of the conflict. These stories reveal not only the depths of human cruelty, but also the extraordinary capacity for survival and resistance. They remind us that the impact of war extends far beyond battlefields and political strategies, affecting every aspect of life for civilians caught in the crossfire. By examining the hidden horrors of Eastern Europe, we gain insight into the lived experiences of those who endured extreme adversity, and we honor the memory of those who suffered and perished. The resilience and courage of ordinary citizens, their acts of defiance and humanity amid systematic oppression, serve as a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of overwhelming challenges. The narratives of hidden resistance, survival strategies, and communal solidarity highlight the ways in which people navigated a landscape defined by fear, violence, and deprivation. From clandestine schools and underground newspapers to secret networks providing food and shelter, civilians displayed ingenuity and bravery in protecting themselves and their loved ones. The role of children in these struggles cannot be understated. Many young individuals participated in resistance efforts, often acting as messengers, scouts, or even combatants, demonstrating remarkable courage despite their youth. These experiences, however, left lasting psychological scars that influenced subsequent generations. Entire communities were transformed by the war, with traditional social structures replaced by networks of survival, secrecy, and solidarity. Religious institutions, cultural organizations, and local governance were often suppressed, yet informal networks persisted, sustaining communities in the absence of formal support structures. The lasting impact of these hidden horrors is evident in the post-war narratives of Eastern Europe. Survivors recounted stories of loss, endurance, and resilience, contributing to a collective memory that continues to shape regional identity. The reconstruction of cities, revival of cultural life, and restoration of social networks were ongoing challenges, often undertaken amidst political uncertainty and economic scarcity. The study of these hidden experiences provides crucial lessons for understanding the broader implications of war. It emphasizes the importance of protecting civilian populations, preserving human rights, and documenting historical events comprehensively. By acknowledging and disseminating the stories of those who lived through the hidden horrors of Eastern Europe, we ensure that these experiences are not forgotten and that future generations can learn from the resilience and suffering of their predecessors. The exploration of Eastern Europe during World War II underscores the complex interplay of occupation, resistance, survival, and post-war recovery. It reveals a region that was subjected to extreme violence and deprivation, yet remained a space of human agency, courage, and perseverance. Understanding these narratives deepens our comprehension of history, highlighting the multidimensional impact of global conflicts on local populations, and reminds us of the enduring importance of empathy, historical awareness, and the human capacity for endurance in the face of adversity. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and drop a comment telling us which historical topic you want to see next. We can't wait to hear your suggestions.